Hey there, it's Angie Bird. Welcome to the Midlife Magic and Mayhem podcast. Today's conversation is with Shauna VanBogart. Shauna is an intuitive change agent that shows business owners how to build, run, and scale sustainable businesses that feel as good as they look. With a graduate degree in communications and leadership studies, mastery level certification in clinical hypnotherapy, and over 15 years mentoring business owners running everything from startups to multi-million-dollar brands, Shauna knows what it takes to evolve the human behind the business so that elevated service, revenue, and company growth occurs as a natural result of creating cohesive alignment within. On a mission to help business owners create greater financial freedom, fulfillment, and impact, Shauna utilizes her experience and ongoing education to work one-on-one with clients to transform their business identity so they can bring their best and most authentic selves into alignment with their business and enjoy sustainable, soulful success with more ease. Even if you don't own your own business, I highly recommend this episode because we go a lot of places. We talk about intuition, receiving, creation, relationship to money, thinking, and so much more. We even found that we share a recurring dream with the same animal and what that possibly means for each of us. I've known Shauna for several years, and I always learn so much from each interaction and am fed by her energy and clarity. Please enjoy this transformational conversation with Shauna VanBogart. Hello, Shauna.
Hello.
Welcome to the Midlife Magic and Mayhem podcast. It is such a pleasure to have you here.
I mean, anytime you invite me to a conversation, it's a hell yes. Angie, you know that.
Well, we do have a decent history of having good conversations. So it really is a pleasure and an honor to have you here. And I look forward to whatever juiciness that we can stir up together.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So let us know more about you. A bit about your story. What made Shauna Shauna?
That's a massive, massive question. Let's just start with innately always having an interest in bettering myself. I don't know where that came from, but it's kind of been there since day one. And I was able to foster that through different things I was involved with growing up. Felt like, through my parents' guidance as well, I was just always in positions to be in a place of self-growth and foster my innate interests that maybe weren't cultivated in school. And all of that really led me to my career journey by realizing that I love people. I love seeing people's potential, and that I seemingly have a gift for knowing what's in people's way and also knowing what tools can be used or what insight would be relevant to getting them from point A to point B. So the entire culmination of what I've done professionally started with transformation on an image consulting level, which was very exterior tool oriented, appearance, clothing, body language, communication, training in those realms. And then I just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper because, as you know, we can shift all of the external things that we want. But if we don't have that cohesion between the internal and the external, then a lot of those efforts will fall flat or eventually hit the same ceiling, maybe in a different way. But so, yeah, my journey just continues to go deeper into transformation.
That's one of the things that I have always loved and respected about you. We've known each other for several years now.
Yeah.
And is this beautiful harmony that you seem to, I don't know if it's create or tap into, but between strategy and clarity and where it's coming from, way of being. You have a podcast called Just Being, and I know a lot of your work with your clients and in your business is around more of the being, less of the doing. And you and I share that belief. So I'd love to hear your perspective on what that means for people that might not be exactly clear as to what it is that we're talking about.
Because we all have things to do all of the time. So this way of being can seem a little bit esoteric. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
So what's your perspective about that distinction?
Okay, well, let's use a metaphor that might be helpful. So, you know that window right before you get your period where it's very easy to be in a space of second guessing everything. I hate my husband. My entire career is wrong. Like, there's a state that we drop into. It is hormonal induced, but I think also just like a pattern of knowing that 5 days before a period can do some interesting things. It completely changes the lens that we look through everything. I don't do certain things in that window because I'm in a state of being that is not advantageous. As real as that stuff feels in the moment, I don't do that. So when we talk about being, it's understanding that our state and our attitude, our energy, our essence behind all of our action is in our control. And when it's not, because there's other things going on, we do have tools and we have the power of discernment and awareness of that. But inspired action is always coming out of who we're being. And to me, it's less about perfecting a certain way of being and more about knowing, okay, there are all these different states of being I can put myself in, or different states of being I fall into, right? And in that space, what is the best thing that I need to be doing? Because whatever's coming out of that is going to get certain kinds of results, right? And so for me, in the entire body of my work as it currently stands now, it's like, I don't even want to talk about what you're doing until I understand the mood, the energy, the attitude that's behind those actions, because it doesn't matter. All day long, you can be tweaking your Instagram strategy or your website or your copy. If your attitude is that making money is hard, it's not going to matter, right? So being is what's the fuel you're putting into your actions. And for me, like, it's a non-negotiable that it's premium fuel.
Yeah, premium fuel. So you mentioned something in the beginning of that. Well, first of all, hold on. So that hormonal shift thing you're talking about, I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never experienced that. That's
no, never.
Crazy talk. I have no idea. None of us have any idea what you're talking about. Great metaphor. That you mentioned control. Like there's something that we have control over. So in this place of way of being, what is it that we would have control over if it's something that is innate?
It's our response.
Yeah.
To me, it's as simple as it's always in the response. So sure, you might have you're always going to have an innate judgment. It's the way our brains work, right? Like, I mean, this goes all the way back to my image consulting days. We do have this immediate, instinctual, innate reaction to things. But then you have the choice to go, is that the reaction and the response I really want to give to this? You get to have moments where you get to slow way down and go, there's so much for me in this moment. And every moment includes, I hate to even use words like this, but for the sake of it, we have to. Every moment includes negative and positive. Everything at every level. There's always something negative. There's always something positive. And so for me, it comes back to really deeply understanding that the way that I respond in the now is reinforcing a certain kind of future. And so, sure, I might have different things happening to me that puts stress under my state, but I have control over how I respond, which drops me into a different kind of being because I know that I create from my responses to what's playing out in my life. And it's very easy to forget that we do have that power of choice to respond to our circumstances. It's so easy to get swept up into our circumstances, into our thoughts, into projection, into blame. All this stuff is happening to me. But I see kind of the biggest component of my work being to remind women, especially, you do have power here. There is a choice there. I promise you it's there. And the more that you neglect to see it that way, the further away that you get from that authentic power that was instilled in each and every one of us. You're not excluded from it. So, like ownership, to me, that's the most empowered way to show up to your life.
Absolutely. And in the domain of this conversation, of this podcast being midlife, and I propose this as a time of transition And we all have different transition points in our life. It could be in your personal relationships. It could be age. It could be becoming a new mother. I know you've had a child in the past couple of years, starting a new business, shifting a business, career change. I'm getting a lot of questions of, what about career change? What if I've been doing something for a long time and now I kind of don't know what I want to do and want to shift into something else and I have no idea. So in the domain of transition, and you're talking about response, how would that show up in this place of what could be next for me?
Can you put that question in a slightly different way? Because I want to make sure that I hit the nail on the head with that one, and I'm not entirely sure what you're asking.
Got it. So I have found in my own life when I'm in a transition state, looking to what's next. I've had things have been happening and it kind of feels like the slack tide, right? It feels churning, right? So that when things come in, it could be a conversation, it could be a new idea, it could be, that's when it can feel very messy and very chaotic and very overwhelming.
Oh, for sure.
And that's when we tend to react. So when you were just speaking about reaction and response and how I'm responding is going to be creating my future.
I feel you. Yeah.
Does that make more sense? Am I being more clear? Okay.
Yeah. So I think there's some really important things to remember about any kind of transformation, which I guess one could argue philosophically, we're always in transformation. But like when you're talking about like those more human, like, no, it's a period of change, right? Like first, our systems are built to repel that, because change is venturing into the unknown. So first, just understanding that anytime we put ourselves in any kind of position where there's a lot of unknowns we've just put onto the table, you're going to have whatever system flare-ups are unique to you, right? That could be nervous system responses. That could be overthinking. That could be certain behavior that's perfectionistic or people-pleasing or sabotaging, right? I think the important thing to understand is like, this is all about knowing yourself. This is all about building a sacred operation manual for how different parts want to come on the line and engage in those kinds of behaviors when change or the unknown or making big decisions or taking risks, whatever the specific trigger is, you have a playbook, you have programming that's going to respond. And looking at how have those responses served me in the past or not served me. Because you have a whole life of experiences to kind of build out this playbook and look at your programming so you can go, you know what, that overthinking and all this researching and continuing to find all these facts so I can make sure I'm making the right decision actually leads me into more confusion. Like we have to start with what have we been doing first. So I think even just what you said, understanding periods of change and transition are never clean. They're not supposed to be clean. It's supposed to be disruptive. It's supposed to be chaotic. Birthing a baby is not clean, right? Like it's incredibly messy and painful. And there's good stress and there's bad stress. Not all stress is bad. So I think sometimes we just have this unnecessary expectation that we put on ourselves that we've got to be perfect moving through something we've never done before, like making a change for our life. And it's not going to be that way. So the faster you can get on board with just accepting this kind of stuff just comes with the territory of change, period. That's just an exhale, in my opinion, to begin with. And then, like I said, doing the work to just really understand, okay, what are my patterns of responses in the past? And really, what has that gotten me? And realizing, that's not a good response. How about I try the opposite response? Like just start there. Try the opposite.
Absolutely. When people come to you and ask how, okay, that all sounds great. How do I do that? How do I know myself? How do I change my response? How, when we're talking about the work of being.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you, okay, that's great. How do I do that?
Yeah. Okay. Tell me the last thing that pissed you off. Let's work. Your life is always giving you.
My husband last night. How about that?
Yeah, your husband last night.
Real
Okay,
time.
what did he say that triggered
Right.
you? And more
Right.
so, like, what is the sensation that it dropped you into? And
Mhm.
getting at the emotional signature of whatever that is, because that emotional signature will take you all the way back into the subconscious to figure out, okay, is this a wounding? Is this just a habitual response? Is this just a reaction to something in the past that's a protective armor that no longer serves you? But you are always given the material. You do not have to, unless you desire to, go on some 20-day retreat overseas, you have plenty of material to work with. I mean, and then when you look at things specific to money, let's say, which I love to talk about because money is such an amazing teacher of self. Such an amazing teacher of self. I love working with money in that way because how do you respond when you look at your bank account? There are so many normalized reactions we have to our life. You don't even maybe realize that you go into an actual heart rate increase when you look at your banking app on your phone. So start with the things that are currently showing up. Anytime you feel a restriction, a constriction, a holding of the breath, a stress response, let's start there.
I know you do some work with hypnosis, self-hypnosis. Is that one of the tools that can be of assistance in learning about our stress, our stressors, our nervous system responses, and that can to be a tool to
Mm-hmm.
help kind of guide this path, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm new to, introspection or self-reflection or learning what my patterns are and
Mm-hmm.
looking for ways to repattern my brain and
Yeah.
repattern my responses,
Yeah.
is that something that you have found both in your own experience and with clients to be useful?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, for the record, just so in full transparency, I am certified as a master hypnotherapist because when I discovered it as a tool, I was like, holy shit, this is so freaking powerful. And being that I've always been in a mentorship coaching space, I knew conscious awareness is not enough. And I was on the hunt, as I was exploring, going deeper and deeper, into these nooks and crannies, what other facet of this needs to be included to have a sustainable transformation that also feels good, to where you're not just reverting back to the comfort zone of dysfunction or the things that you don't like or whatever. Right. And so when I landed on hypnosis by just being in different programs and whatever and experienced it, I was like, this is it. This is it. And I think so people understand hypnosis is all about subconscious reprogramming, but there's many different ways that you can sort of use that tool to access that. So when you're working with different people, there's EMDR, there's actual hypnosis where you're in a meditative state and someone's speaking to you, inducing you, and then offering the auto suggestions. But there's also conversational hypnosis, where you just you get into a certain rhythm and you're able to have conversations with people's inner child and different parts of themselves. Then you're looking at the Schwartz internal family systems direction, so you've got all these different ways to get there. But to me, I don't know how you create change without working with the subconscious.
Absolutely agree. To really be able to create change, you have to be able to hit all three levels of the brain.
Yeah.
Right? That's why our conscious mind alone
Mm-hmm.
can think all day long. I like to use diet as an example because, everybody's food, fitness, all these things, and why there's 20 gazillion fitness influencers and nutrition people and health and wellness and all that. It's good. It's important
Yeah.
because everybody's looking for the new thing
Yeah.
but it's all a conscious mind activity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to lose 20 pounds. My conscious mind can tell me that all day long.
Yeah.
But until
Yep.
it sinks into my limbic brain, my lizard brain, my survival brain, until all three of those things get in sync,
Mm-hmm.
and that speaks to and points to this way of being that we're talking about,
Yep.
then that's what can really have a shift occur. Because at that point, I don't have to do anything. Action will arise.
Yeah.
I will start eating better.
Yeah.
It'll
Yeah.
whatever will occur. Any
Yeah.
diet will work for me at that point.
Yeah.
Any fitness program will work for me at that point.
Yeah.
once all that has been aligned. So I really
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
subconscious activity there of sinking below the conscious mind. And the conscious mind processes information at 60 bits per second, and the subconscious mind processes at 11.2 million bits per second.
Yeah.
So guess who's really in charge?
Yeah. Well, and this is just, I mean, common knowledge if you're in that space, that the subconscious is all about survival.
Mhm.
Is that really the best thing running your business? Not necessarily, especially for women when thriving has been shamed and is deeply culturally ingrained that, women are worth less than their male counterparts, right? So, even if you don't, I think sometimes people associate hypnosis with trauma.
Mm.
And well, yes, it's absolutely fundamentally like key for that. There is stuff in everyone's subconscious. And it's not always that it's a bad thing. To me, when people come to work with me or in my programs, it's that certain things worked to get you here. Those same things may not be the approaches, the attitudes, the inherent rule book to get you there. And usually like they're not at all. So, there's just certain ways of showing up that are built into your subconscious for the sake of streamlining your entire system that are not necessarily trauma induced. It's just like habit. So I think part of that discernment is knowing what is actually from a wounding, because I do think that requires a different approach. And what is simply, this is just subconscious habit that I didn't even realize I was doing. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's not really supportive to me right now. But like, you've not had anyone help point that out.
Yeah. What do you see? What do you see as a pattern right now? Like if you were to look out in all the conversations that you're having, where is the resistance? Has it changed over time? Like what's in people's way? Like your gift is getting people from point A to point B. Do you
Yeah.
see any patterns overall that
Yeah.
are
I mean,
like themes arising?
yeah, and I'm biased because this is the space that I went into. It was
Mhm.
not always put this way, but now it is becoming more mainstream to really understand that you have to do the work to polish up your receiving channel. But if there is a pattern that is deeply ingrained in all of us, predominantly women as well, it is really not about so much the healing and the wounding and all of that, so much as it is our resistance to actually receiving what we say we want. And that can be a bit of a tough pill to swallow. I know for me, it was so far repressed and shut off that even in masterminds that I was in like 12 years ago, I remember the leader venturing into these conversations and me being like, I don't have a problem with receiving. I'm here to make $1 million and like grow this business. Like, I mean, that's how I felt. And that was true, but I had a lot of mess in there that I had not even begun to tackle. And the moment I started opening it up, it just was I was so detached from it consciously of that as a concept. I was like, this is bizarre. And like, I don't like that. This is not for me. This is like, I'm here for real business stuff. Right. And then once I got in there, I was like, oh no, it's just that far shoved down. And so everything is so much harder when your natural receiving channel is either stifled or closed. Because then it doesn't matter what you do if you don't have the ability to actually receive it, which is more than gratitude. It's about ownership over it. Then you are going to unconsciously do things that makes everything harder, push it away, sabotage it, like however it plays out.
That is such an incredibly deep place.
Yeah.
That I would love for everyone to really hear that.
Yeah.
It's about receiving.
Yeah.
And
what does it mean?
How deeply that goes.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can just ask a few questions and you can get at it. Like, how well do you accept compliments?
Mm-hmm.
When someone praises you on something, do you feel do you bounce hot potato it back to them, or do you sit and yeah? right? Even questions to get at it. Like if we wave the magic wand and you have the millions of dollars coming in and you've bought the dream car for yourself and you have the home that you want, like whatever that looks like for you, how do the closest people in your life, your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your spouse, your best friends, how do they respond? I would venture to guess there's someone in that circle that you would pick up on some tension with, right? Like, this isn't how we do things. You should give away half of your money. You should be tithing it. You don't need all of that. Who needs all of that? Like, who am I to have that? Like, are you spending it wisely? I don't know if I can manage that kind of money. Like, there's all kinds of stuff that comes with having. And especially as I've been on my journey, not all of it, like start with like stepping into having what you have and imagine living the life and the people that are currently in your space reacting and seeing those changes. Especially as empathic, sensitive women, you're going to pick up on some tension in people. The best metaphor I can give is if you go into a dark room and someone's lying in that bed and you flip the lights on, because you've now turned your light on, what's going to happen, right? Like there's a moment of transition that the other party has to also get on board with when you start making those changes to receive all of your heart's desires. But like, you have to trust that that person's eyes are built to adjust to the light. And if they don't, that's on them, because our eyes are built to adjust to the light. So like, are you going to be able to stand in what might be potential heat? And then beyond that, there's so much more on the line when we start stepping into having our desires met. When you start investing in new ways, when you start coming into wealth, there are different kinds of threats that you don't have to think about. So there's a safety conversation as well around having.
There's so much there.
There's
so much there. One of the things that I was just thinking is, does deserving a part of that conversation? Like receiving, like, do I deserve it? Like when you were talking about all of us, if you wave your magic wand and you have this wealth and then you look at the people around you and you might start getting a little bit of like, oh, well, what'd you do? There's that feeling of, do you really deserve it? And does that play in at all to our receiving block?
It does. I have conflicts with this, and I might still be sorting it out myself. The reason I have conflicts with it is that I believe, and what I've seen in my clients time after time, is that sometimes our system will create conversations and problems around deserving to distract us. And I'm like, here's the thing. We can spend all of our energy trying to get you into a place where you feel deserving. To me, a lot of times that is simply a distraction. I would rather stay in a space of, listen, you're probably perhaps not going to feel deserving, but it doesn't change the fact that we're all built with the same stuff and the same, now we all come in with our different experiences, but you're not excluded from these, laws of receiving that we're talking about. Where you're not excluded from your own internal power. You're not excluded from the power of choice that we were talking about before to shift into different states of being. So like, working on the problem of deserving is almost a little bit like playing into it. That can sometimes be derailing. Now, sometimes just like money, it can lead us into knowing ourselves in different aspects. That's why it really requires a really strong, discerning mentor to help understand, you know what? How about you feel not deserving and you do it anyway? And like tell you how to go down that path. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Beautiful. I was actually looking earlier today at your Instagram, which was also amazing. And you posted something that reminded me of that, about loving yourself. I'm just going to read this really quickly. Loving yourself feels like taking some pressure off, dropping the hypervigilance and letting it be a little messy. Loving yourself is prioritizing balance over perfection. Loving yourself is committing to knowing it's normal and healthy to not like some parts of yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what that reminds me of. It's like, okay, so I don't feel deserving. All right.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I need to, oh my God, fall into this hole of like, I've now got to analyze this and figure it out. It's like, I agree. Like that's a beautiful way to put it. It can be a distraction. Maybe there's something there, but really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is where the blending of the masculine and the feminine can really come together, because to me, being like, that's kind of a distraction, that kind of feels like a masculine posture, a healthy masculine posture. And I think just sometimes when we get into these self-help spirals, as I call them, that's almost a little bit of that wounded feminine who's in this perfectionistic. And I have to say, to me, that is the biggest problem facing the self-help industry right now. We've been inundated. It's a billion dollar, whatever it is, industry of self-help. There's some big flaws in it. Like it can really keep us in a perpetual state of journeying to find our wounds. And at some point, like you got to understand that is like walking forward with your head turned behind you the entire time. How efficient is that going to be? At some point, it's like there will always be something to find about yourself you don't like. Is that really how you're going to spend this journey? In pursuit of whatever the success is you're looking for? Like that, I mean, and I started to fall into that and I was like, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. And that's really where I started to pivot into this. Like, I really believe the best transformation is done through joy and wholeness. And I don't
agree more.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as I'm getting older, that's part of where wisdom comes in.
Mm-hmm.
If we can allow ourselves to have that trust and that intuition in our own sense of, you know what, I don't like, okay, I
Mm-hmm.
have different parts of me. I
Mm-hmm.
have different parts of, okay, that part might not feel very deserving on any given day, or this part might feel victimized by XYZ today and this thing and that thing. And at some point, we get to a place in life where we go, okay,
Yeah.
I have those parts.
Yeah. And
they're just there.
yeah.
Right. And moving on, like,
yeah.
I'm going to go outside and enjoy the weather. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I can spend my
Yeah.
entire life there. And I'm not saying this to minimize any sort of trauma. Right.
No,
That's a
it's
different
discernment.
conversation. That's a whole different
Exactly.
conversation. There's
Yeah.
healing to be done there. I'm talking about the parts of where we can just kind of sink in there and use them as a distraction.
Yeah.
Like you were
Yeah.
saying before, it's really just a distraction. And
Yeah.
having that discernment and having someone, like you said, to be able to point out, hey, wait, oh, all right.
Yeah.
Yep. Distraction. Come on back. Come on back.
Yep.
It's like the pup training a puppy with a pee pad.
Yeah.
You don't get mad at the puppy.
Yeah.
You don't hunt. Well, you might have some sort of something with the puppy to train them, but you basically just love the puppy. Oh no, come back over here. Go back on the pee pad, right?
Yeah.
It's like meditation. It's like we wander and you just come back lovingly.
Yeah. Lovingly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lovingly. Oh, that's a part. Oh, okay. I'm just going to come back over here. Like you can be there and I'm just going to give you a hug and I'm going to move back into my center.
Yeah. Well, and I think even just using this example of everything we've talked about, like if we were playing with this, if someone's listening and they're going, oh my gosh, I've become obsessed with self-healing, right? You can't approach that with, I'm doing it wrong again. That's where it's like, okay, pause. If that's your reaction, you are creating your future out of that reaction. You're actually creating more of what's in the now, right? So if instead you could hear it and go, I'm going to choose to realize that getting myself on that healing journey was absolutely imperative and necessary. And I have grown so much. And now it just requires a different set of tools. And I'm so glad that I heard this because I'm always listening to my divine signs. And thank goodness this podcast just happened to go in this conversation because it's exactly what I needed to hear. So then it becomes just a response of, I'm always in the right positions to hear my answers instead of I'm doing something wrong, right? I mean, and that entire energy shift, even in this example, just innately sparks the next action. So there's not even a question of what do I do next? Like when you're in a place of responding from gratitude, but more of that receiving ownership over, I cannot believe that I'm in the right space again to hear exactly what I needed right now. I own that. I'm so powerful. I'm always consciously co-creating in my life with the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, energy, and then, and I have this idea next, or I know who to reach out to, or Angie's my person. That's how you use it right there in that moment.
Absolutely. I have a question back to receiving.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a place in you coming from an embodied place? I have a curiosity, like, what does it feel like when you know that that channel is open, when you know that that flow is there and that receiving land, like something, it's landing for you. I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to think of a different way to say this, but that's what's coming to me. It's like you feel the receiving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it could be different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
What does it feel like for you in your body?
It feels safe, which is like this grounded, both feet are in the ground. I'm secure, like firmly planted here. And it feels like this flow. I don't know. Are they going to see video at all anywhere? But like, it
It
feels
could
like a
be, but
flow.
yeah,
Yeah. Where I'm just like a river flowing, right? I mean, it just is. And it's for me a almost full body feeling. Sometimes it might be isolated up in my heart center, but like, it's really a full body, like, yeah, it's always talking to me. I always can see my answers. It's just about, well, no, let me put it this way. The answers are always there. Your co-creator is always communicating with you. It's never about, are the answers there? Are my signs there? It's about, am I able to see them? Am I in a position to see them? So what it feels like to me is I'm seeing, not quite literally through my eyes, maybe, but like, I see, I know. And sometimes that seeing is not quite literally seeing. It's just, I know. And that knowing feeling takes up my entire like upper chest body, like my, where your inner child would reside, down in your solar plexus, all the way up to my heart. Like, you just know, and you're relaxed. Sometimes
relaxed.
I say that because sometimes I thought receiving was like, you know how sometimes if you go to like, let's say a conference or something and you're like, I'm so energized, and it's kind of like adrenaline, that may not be receiving. That might be the high off of there's so much data coming in. Usually it is. And I used to think that that was my intuition. No, intuition is a little more like calm than that. That tends to be more of like a shiny object kind of high. And so relaxed is a pretty key element of like, you're in that receiving space. It is what it is in this moment, and you are here for all of it.
That's such a great insight. I was feeling into that as you were speaking it, of like being at a conference and having that energetic feeling. And it's more of an outward flow,
Yeah.
maybe. And
Yeah.
then the receiving is more of an inward flow. It's like there's a fullness in it and
Yeah.
relaxed.
Yeah.
That's such a key
Yeah.
word, is
It feels
relaxed.
very feminine because
Yes.
it is
Hmm.
feminine. And so there's a little bit of like, like allure in that feeling. It's like the ultimate feeling of feeling taken care of. So it's all feminine. It's all feminine.
Mm. What's the difference for you, uh, or I'd like to talk about a concept that's, because I kind of go back and forth with this in my own mind. The distinction between being a creator, like I just heard you say, co-creating,
Mm-hmm.
and tapping into, if that makes sense. It's like I'm creating, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
creator. I can create the reality that I want at any time. It kind of
Mm-hmm.
goes along with receiving, creating. Or is it everything's already there? I'm just opening myself to tap into it like a field. Like I'll use love as an
Mm.
example. So for me, love is not a noun. It is not something to be given
Mm-hmm.
or to necessarily even receive. It's not an object to pass back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
It's a field
Mm-hmm.
that I can open myself up to and tap into it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of going out there a little bit.
No, I'm following you.
But
Yeah.
right, but it's
Yeah.
something to be tapped into. It's
Yeah.
not me creating it.
Well, I would argue, I mean, I follow you. I think it's both.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you're tapping into it, it's of you, is my opinion. I mean, I think it's of you and it's out here. I mean, it's an inhale, it's an exhale at any given time. You know, when I think about co-creating when you're in a co-creative relationship, you are tapped into that power within yourself, which also exists out there. So it's both. And I think you need to show up to the table with the holding of space that it is both. That's the dichotomy of it. It's not one or the other. And the reason I say that is sometimes when I have these conversations, I think people who want to bring a religious stance to it, which is fine, you know, can sometimes inadvertently though bring an authority figure-esque kind of energy where it's like this authority figure. And even you could use the field of energy is going to give you something. No, you're not waiting like with your cup, like fill my cup, you know, God, you know, like that's not, no, because then you're already in a one down position. Now that might be how it's been rewritten in certain texts or whatever, but that's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to understand that there is love's a great example of it. It could be like, we could equate that to energy. It's like, it's in all of us, it's of us, but it's also out here. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that's how I would see it.
You are. Yeah. I appreciate that. I'd like to pivot a little bit and talk about magic. We were just talking about creating.
Yeah.
Where do you create magic in your life?
It's not isolated to any one bucket.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, so I'll give you an example. I did this really powerful breath work session on Monday and experienced, I mean, magic in that, just like, you know, that puts you into a unique position to receive so much clarity and to release so much. That night, I had a recurring dream that I've had my entire adult life, which is seeing grizzly bears in the yard of the house that I grew up in. And that's always sort of been, I would say, like a spirit animal of mine. Like, I don't know, I feel a connection to bears specifically. Yet this time, the dream was multiple bears, when in the past, it's usually only one. So I was like, okay, what might that be pointing to, right? So as I look at how this magic shows up in these really awesome messages that resonate for me, in language that resonates with me, animals, nature, it could be numbers for you, it could be books for you, it could even be TV. Like, it's always communicating in the ways that you value. And so I'm thinking about, like, what is the meaning behind this? And for me, I was getting at just the general fear that is there that might be kind of just a little bit in the way at this point. And I just need to revisit the relationship with fear as it is. So then that day, I'm sitting, baby's gone to bed, and TV's just on. Is election, as you know, yesterday. So we've got the TV on, and it's a commercial, and I'm journaling, and I had just written down something. It's probably not worth pulling up, but I had just written down something about fear and about it, not, and I know this and I preach this, it's not about eradicating it. But for me, it was realizing I don't even need to know the specificity of fear that's showing up. Just let it exist. It's always going to be there. So like, you do not need to keep figuring out and putting a label to it. Even just call it fear and move on, because you need to use your resources really wisely. So I had just written that down. I look up at the TV, and it was one of those like 30 seconds of Zen, and it was bears, grizzly bears on the screen. And I was like, okay, boom. Right. And it's that, to me, is the magic of knowing you have an advisor at the whim at any time. Like, you have this amazing counsel of information and wisdom to tap into. When you are tapped into it yourself, it's an open communication channel. So for me, that's where the magic shows up, is really, I've gone quite deep this year in understanding that communication channel and working on honing it, working on opening up to it, working on building out my different facets of intuition. It's fascinating.
I love that so much, because I too have recurring dreams about bears.
Do you?
I do.
What does it mean for you?
It is that I think there is something around fear there. It's usually one, and it's trying to get into the house.
Yes, same.
They don't ever get in.
No, same.
They're
Although
trying
mine
to get
did.
in.
This one, it did. That's what was also different is it got into the house and I was like, okay, that's different from the past, but it's the exact same thing.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I think it's an overwhelm. It's a fear. For me, that's my interpretation of it. And it is. And now I've gotten to the point of where if Bear shows up again, it's like, oh,
yeah,
there's Bear. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love also about your story is when we have awareness and when we're paying attention to life and you look up at the screen and you see bears there, that we don't discount that we don't go, oh, what a coincidence. Ha ha ha.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like when we really take that in and receive it, take it, then we see it more and more and more. And then we can start co-creating with the thing.
That's exactly how you become more intuitive. And that's another example. So we can really hit this home for people. However you're responding to the now is what creates more of your future. So if you want more magic, you respond to the now with magic, not with skepticism. Otherwise, you're just going to keep, getting things that you can't trust or whatever. So like, I had to just start going, no, I believe in this stuff. I'm putting both feet in. I believe in it. I've had too many incidences in my life. And now it's just ridiculous, Angie. I mean, like the stuff and the communication channel that I has always been there. I mean, I was always an intuitive kid, but because of my upbringing as well, I also built a certain level of awareness that was nurtured. And then putting myself in positions to have weird experiences, that are not that weird at this point, I don't think, and same as you, like, I'm here for it. Like I took a mediumship class last month. It was wildly fascinating, so like just continuing to put myself in those positions has brought me more magic because I respond to magic. So I create magic, but it starts with the response.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And being open, try it on. I'm not saying that any of this is right or correct or real or any of that. It's real to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then my life will then show up in a way that stuff is real and stuff gets manifested and things happen. And I love that.
I think what gets in our way is when we talk about this stuff, we each pull up a visual in our head of what we think that looks like. I want to know from you, like, maybe not now, but like when you were kind of in the closet about this, what was the image that you would pull up in your mind of intuitive, psychic? Like, what did that look like?
Oh, I mean, a woman with lots of big flowy clothes and like jangly stuff and a crystal ball and like, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh God, really?
Yeah.
And it's so not that. It can be that. It can be that too. That's great.
Yeah.
But it can look like, or it can look like my dog.
Whatever, right?
Yeah. I mean, anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
And I think I would say that is probably on the front end, one of the biggest things in people's way of receiving it is because they're like, well, I'm not that. And I frankly don't want to be like that. And it's not, we all get to have our preferences. So just own that. You're not a bad person for saying, I don't want to look like that wearing the flower crowns, putting crystals down my bra. Like, okay, like it's
totally,
fine. It's totally fine,
get that.
Right. Yes. Like, so like, hey, like I had a yoni egg at one point. I was like, you know what? This is not my thing. Like, this isn't, I don't think this is for me. I'm a little worried I'm going to lay this thing on a sidewalk and there'll be a child behind me that like is forever confused.
That is so good. I know. I can't tell you how many things that I have done and gone down and done the thing. And then all of a sudden wake up one day and go, I don't think that's me. That one's not me. But I love the trying it on.
Totally.
Right? I love experimenting with all these things and not shutting it off.
Yeah.
Not being like, oh, no, that's too weird. That's too crazy. That's too, I don't know. That's what, not shutting it down, being open enough to say, sure, yoni egg, let's go for it. Like, And then knowing in yourself and saying, no, okay, that's not for me.
Not it.
I don't want to lay an egg on the street in front of a kid.
It's in my plant. I put it in my planter. It like hangs out with my plant now.
Perfect. It can be nice fertilization for your plant.
Totally. Yeah.
If anybody doesn't know what a yoni egg is, just look it up. Google yoni egg.
You
You'll find plenty of things. I love it. Shauna, thank you so, so much for
Yeah.
spending this time. I have one last question. What are you really passionate about right now? What's your desire?
Mm. Oh gosh, that's a huge question
I
because
know.
it's so fragmented. I have to say, I have put so much into like so many resources into myself that at this point, I am really inspired and driven by this concept of I want to feel a different relationship with opportunity where it's almost like more than I can handle. And I had a client recently say that too as we were tapping into some stuff. And I was like, yep, I know exactly what you mean. Like, I want to play. I'm inspired by playing with different sensations that I want to experience. And I have to say that that to me has been lately, like in the past year, one of the fast tracks to stepping into different results is realizing again, okay, certain things like got me here. Now I'm like, I'm kind of okay, like taking a little bit of a risk. Like I'm kind of okay. Like I want to experience that sensation. So I feel like that's a big desire of mine. Separately, on the more tangible side, I have always loved fashion and clothes. It's what got me into image consulting to begin with. And I feel like I kind of took a break with that with being pregnant and then COVID, you're home and all of that. And I feel like there's a reinvention happening on that level. And so just like playing with Pinterest again. And for a while, I have to say my mind was like, that's silly. You have better, more important things to do. And it's bringing me so much joy to create and design and look at colors and look at clothing and like return back to an interest that was a huge part of my life in my teenage years and my early college years and was a huge catalyst. And I feel like I kind of got away from that. So that's a big part too.
I love that too. And that really speaks to the
Yeah.
magic as well. Like looking back into our youth, looking back to when we were younger and what brought us
Yeah.
joy? What could we do that we just got lost in ourselves and it was pure happiness and
Yeah.
pure joy? And are there ways that we can bring that back in now, even if we think we don't have the space or the time or that's silly or what, like, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Go back in there, see what's there. There might not
Yeah.
be anything, but if there's something there,
Mm-hmm.
explore it. Again,
Mm-hmm.
experiment. Why not? What if?
What if?
What if?
Yeah. Yeah. How
You don't
good can it
know.
get? That's the
And be open to
question.
receiving what's there to be learned and what's there to be given.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that that's like, the real flex. Like, really, you ground into receiving something and then watch the reaction after that, because sometimes it's a snapback and step into a response, maybe perhaps of what I just said, like, how good can it get from here? And that is a really fun stretch to be in of how good can this get? Let me see. It's a good approach to life, I think.
I love it. What a beautiful, beautiful place to end.
Yeah.
How good can it get?
Hmm.
Love that question. Love it. Love it. Thank you again. Where can people find you? What do you have coming on the horizon?
Yeah, my hangout is Instagram. You can find me at Shauna VanBogart. The program that I teach called Mind Over Matter is all about stepping into your master receiving channel. So if you enjoyed what we talked about, that is exactly, I have a 5-step framework that I walk people through in a group format in the fall and in the spring. So we just wrapped up the fall round. And you can find that all over my Instagram or the Instagram handle. This is Mind Over Matter.
Great. And we'll put all these links in show notes and people will be
Cool.
able to find you. So yeah, and I have experience with Mind Over Matter and it is a beautiful, beautiful program.
Yeah,
So I highly,
it's
highly recommend it.
evolved in a really
Yeah.
cool way. So yeah, I forget that you've been it, so you know.
Gorgeous. Gorgeous. All right,
Hmm.
great. Well, thank you again, Shauna.
Yeah,
And I hope to chat with you again soon.
absolutely.
Thanks.
Wow, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Shauna. She really has such a level of clarity and purpose that is so inspiring to me. And please subscribe to the podcast and leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel if you also want to see these conversations. Share with your friends and follow me, Angie.Bird, on Instagram. This will help the show gain momentum and share with our sisters out there who are also looking to bring some magic and mayhem into their lives as well. See you next time.